All right, so I'm here with Dominic Crapuchettes. Did I say that correctly?
Oh, c'est parfait.
Okay. He is the owner and creator of North Star Games. And if you don't know North Star, he's also the designer of many very well-known games like Wits and Wagers, Say Anything, Evolution, Most Wanted. His published games, one of my favorite from last year, Quacks of Quedlinburg. I named it my number one of 2019. And he started the company after being a Alaskan salmon fisher for 12 seasons, and has an incredible story of how all the power went out and he had to follow the North Star to get home, and he promised if he made it out alive he would start a gaming company. And 2003 is when that began. And it's a really fun story on your about section. I think it's the most interesting about section on the website I've ever read, and it makes me feel like I understand the name of it because I never really knew what North Star Games meant beforehand. But an incredible gaming company that I've enjoyed many of the games of. And so thanks for coming on, Dominic, and
Sure.
talking with me.
Thank you, Trent, for having me on.
Yeah, I just watched your TED Talk from 2011, by the way.
Oh my God. Okay.
First of all, that's really cool. It feels like an accomplishment in itself to have the thing TED Talk. How was the experience when you were there? That was a while ago in 2011, but really
Oh
great
yeah.
talk, still holds up today.
It was very intimidating. I was very nervous, but it was fun. It was fun. It was really fun to be a part of.
Now, I think that specific type of TED Talk is a different experience than like the ones that they organize themselves or something. It's like the independent one. But
Mhm.
from the process, I remember you have to essentially send in your talks or like scripts or like videos of you doing it beforehand. Is that right? So that they can like make sure that it's high quality. Or do you have to do anything like that?
That didn't happen. So they reached out to me. The topic was reinventing industries or something about reinvention. I forget.
Okay.
And the organizer reached out to me to see if I would do something about board games. And so I was advised, or not advised, yeah, advised to not make it personal and to not do any self promotion and to just stick to the ideas. And I
Hmm.
come from a very academic background, so I literally did that, and I kind of regret it. Everyone else was much more personal, and I was more about like just erudite
Right.
ideas. So I would do it differently, but it was still good. It was fun.
Okay. So can you tell me like a bit about your background? Because the Alaskan fishing, I feel like that's probably something your parents did, or like how did you, why did you go into that for 12 years? Because I know even before that you loved designing things and were within the hobby and playing Magic and winning some money through that and all sorts of things. Like what
Yeah.
led you to go and be a fisher?
So my dad went up to Alaska when he was 20, I think, and started driving a dump truck. And then him and his brother was stationed in the army or the military there. Um, they got into fishing a couple years later, and so he fished for 40 years. I went up every year of my life. So 12 seasons is how long I was captaining. I
Okay.
went up every year from 2 till 30. And at first I was just up with my mom and the other crew members family, and we would just play with dogs and run through the wild and run around on the dirt roads. um and then I went to my mom's set net site, which is a site where you screw in two sides of the net, and when the tide comes up, you catch fish. When the tide goes down, you take the fish out of the net, you wash them because they're stuck in mud, and then you get them on a plane or sometimes a helicopter to a cannery, which is sometimes an issue. We were out on a kind of, it was called the West Side, and there was 6 cabins within a 2-mile radius.
Wow.
And we built the cabin. We brought the wood over on my dad's fishing boat and threw it onto the land, and then brought it over and built it.
Wow, that's amazing. So then as a kid growing up, are you designing games and creating things just because that's like what you do when there's no one else around to play with and like go outside?
So that's interesting. I think It's hard to say. My family has a religious background. My dad was raised by missionaries in China. So I remember going to the movies was sinful for
Mm.
my dad when he was raised. So we just were never part of pop culture. We didn't watch television. We played games 3 or 4 times a week, and most often board games. My dad taught me chess when I was 4 and entered me into competitions, gave me a chess tutor. For some reason, he really wanted me to play chess. But we also played a lot of cards and Monopoly. We played charades and a lot of party games. So it was just kind of, I'd say it was a real central activity for my family growing up.
Okay. And so, uh, when you're out fishing and doing these things, like, what is the burning desire? Like, what do you imagine making board games would be like and starting your own company? And then when that moment came and was realized, what did that feel like?
So I always wanted to, well, when I say always, I don't know. I've designed games for most of my life. So I have like some games, in my folder from like 6th grade. I think that's about the earliest I have actual games from.
Hmm.
In 8th grade, I designed a game that got banned from school because too many of my classmates were playing it during class. There were like 30 to 40 people that were playing it pretty consistently. Um, so, but I was never business minded. So in high school, I wrote a business plan for my economics paper, which is already weird, about the game company I wanted to start. And so it was just kind of something that I wanted to do, but something that I thought wasn't practical and wasn't sure if I'd ever do it.
Hmm.
Uh, when I decided, you've heard of my fishing stories, so there were a lot of near-death experiences, and I designed a lot of games on the boat in Alaska, and my poor crew members had to play them with me. And so, yeah, this was something that I always wanted to do, and finally I decided the way to go about it was to go to business school, learn a little bit about business. Thank God I did because I knew nothing, and raise some money, find a business partner, and start up a company. So that's what I did.
What do you think the biggest takeaways from business school were that you would have made a mistake if you hadn't gone?
Well, I think so. I think the best thing was just being involved in a community of people who are ambitious and knowledgeable. So I learned a lot, but I think one of the most important things was just raising the bar of success to well beyond what I was wanting. I really just wanted to design games, so it's really just a lifestyle
Mm.
um, that I wanted to pursue. And so, when they raise the bars, they're talking about, well, how are you going to get into national distribution? How are you going to get into Target? So they're talking and trying to solve problems that I would have never been trying to do. And so that just sets your sight much higher in trying to figure out how can you leverage your work, in the best way, in the most efficient way possible.
That makes sense. And so, looking at your collection of games that you've published, what are the ones that you're the most proud of as a designer and the ones you're most proud of as just a publisher?
So it's hard to um, separate sales from like what I'm proud of, because it's really fun to create a game and then for people to love it
Right.
and to be playing it and enjoying it. There are definitely gems that I think have been overlooked. We didn't have a good marketing plan. We didn't have a way to get the game to the people that loved playing it. And so that's kind of our fault as a business for not doing it well. And I love those games, but I can't love them as much as the ones that people are saying, coming to me and saying, I love this game, thank you, and just posting pictures and, gushing over it. So those are the ones that are just bring the most joy to our whole company.
Hmm.
And they include Wits and Wagers and Say Anything. Those combined have sold almost 3 million copies now. Um, Happy Salmon has sold, and I did not design this. This is Ken and Quentin, but I'm not sure, several 100,000.
Hmm.
The Evolution series has sold a little over 300,000. And then now we have the good fortune of having the license rights to Quacks of Quinlanburg, which you just said is one of your favorite games.
Yeah.
Taverns of Tiefenthal, and those are great. I mean, people love them, and I love them, and they're part of our portfolio now. So it's kind of it really helped, I'd say, establish our company in the hobby world, because we're kind of we're a little bit way over sprawled. We're in toy and specialty, we're in mass market, we're in digital, and we're in hobby. And really, hobby is the place where we're doing best right now. And I think a good part of that is because of the success of Quacks.
Hmm. So when you're looking to get the licensing or just the publishing rights to a game that you didn't design, what's your criteria for that? Like, how did you pick Quacks?
So Quacks, we went out, Quacks was pitched to us, and we, I don't know, didn't bring it back. So it was pitched to Luke and Nick in Germany,
Mhm.
and I think it just kind of got dropped. I don't remember what happened. Then when it got nominated, we went back and said, hey, we're interested now. I got nominated for the Spiels Jahres. And they said, oh, well, we've given the rights to one of your Canadian distributors, Lion Rampant. And we've built a relationship with Lion Rampant for 15 years, have a really, really good relationship since about the inception of both of our companies. And so they said, you're gonna do a much better job than us selling this game. So why don't you take it, and we'll just use them as the Canadian distributor, which is I think they're our only distributor in Canada.
Hmm.
So I think they got instead another roll and write from Wolfgang Warsch. But I forget exactly the deal, because I'm not on the sales side, I'm on the product side. And so we just had the good fortune of having a good relationship, and they let us have the rights after
Very
it was
cool.
nominated. Yeah, and then it won.
Well, it's a easy way to select, is just pick all the nominated and winners.
Yes, very easy way. I mean,
How many?
clearly it's about building relationships over the long run, and slowly building those relationships. And because the people who have hot licenses, they want to give it to the biggest companies, because those are the people that are able to sell the most.
Right.
And one of the advantages that we have over other companies in this department is we don't publish very many games. And the games that we do publish, we market well, and we market for a long time, and we really promote. So we pick and choose games that we think are really good, and then we focus on them. And so there are other publishers are interested in working with us, because of our model is not a model where we just bring in 30 games and then see what sticks. We bring in only a few that we really love, and then we promote them.
So before the show, I mentioned how I published a few games, but had a very difficult time marketing them after the Kickstarter. What is your big marketing? Like, how do you market your games? And when you say you market it well, like, what does that actually mean? Are you spending a lot on Facebook ads? Are you putting it in Target and then making posters? Like, what does that look like?
Well, every game is going to be different. Getting into Target is extremely difficult, and fairly rare to go direct to Target. You're going to need to build up kind of a fan following for a while before they would be interested, unless you have like a big license, so like Jaws or something. So what do we do for marketing? Mostly, we believe board games get marketed through third-party endorsements. So mostly through your friends saying this is a great game, you should check it out. And if you don't have and second best to that are reviewers who you trust. So we think that's the most important way to market our games. Advertisements are not super effective unless you have a really smart angle. For instance, a bird game like Wingspan, two birders, and you can target birders and say, hey, this game was endorsed by some bird community.
Right.
So something where it's really a niche and it's really well targeted. But other than well targeted ads, we don't think advertisements are very effective.
So you're saying that essentially the influencers that are making reviews and writing the blog posts, like, those are the ones that you want to get your games in front of and have make content for, because that's the best way to get sales.
That's what I think. I mean, in hobby, it's different in each channel, but in hobby, I think that's the best way.
Yeah.
We go to the shows. We don't have a whole lot of games, so we can show just about every game in our product line at every show.
Okay.
And yeah, try to get reviewers interested in checking out the game, and if they like it, they'll talk about it.
Okay. And as a designer yourself, like how many of the games are you designing still, and versus looking for, or are people on your team designing? Are you the only designer at North Star?
No, I'm not. Right now, we have two designers, Ben Goldman and myself. And Ben Goldman worked on, he was a developer on Evolution Climate, Evolution the Beginning, did a lot of work on Evolution the Beginning, and Oceans. So actually, Ben and I are the main driving forces behind Oceans. And he has designed the next game in our pipeline, which actually you can see right behind us a little bit, is
Oh,
Paint
yeah.
the Roses.
Very cool.
Let's see if I can. It is a cooperative deduction game.
Cooperative deduction.
Yeah.
So what can you describe it a little bit? Like what does cooperative deduction look like in actuality? Like what are some of the mechanics?
So it is set in the Alice in Wonderland world. We are the Queen's Royal Gardens, and we need to decorate her garden the way she wants it. And her being the Queen of Hearts, she doesn't really care about her garden. She just wants to chop her heads off. So everyone has a Queen's Whim card, which is what the current Queen's Whim is. And it says she wants a heart next to a rose, or like a red rose, or she wants a clover. So there's 4 shapes and 4 colors. She wants a clover next to a yellow rose. And so when it's your turn, you'll place a tile, and everyone else will put a marker on that if it satisfies their Queen's whims.
Okay.
And so then you're trying to deduce what they are and what the Queen's whims are. And when you deduce them, you move forward. And after every turn, the Queen moves forward, and she moves forward double if you make a bad guess. And so you're just trying to stay ahead of the Queen. And if you don't, she chops off your head and you lose. And if you do, you win. And one of the really, really unique aspects of the game, the theme works, the game is very simple and clean and works extremely well. But one of I'd say the best features of the game on the game mechanics side is if you are doing well, the Queen moves faster. And if you're doing poorly, the Queen doesn't move faster. So it almost always, like 95% of every game is very tense until the very end. And so you could go really slow if you're satisfied with a poor score, and it's still going to be tense until the very end, but your score won't be that good. So there's still a reason to like score chase, but it makes all the games fun regardless of the level that
Very cool. So this would go under the same category of games. Like if I were to choose a game for a night, I would probably select this among The Mind or Hanabi or games like that where we're all trying to work together, but there's some hidden information that we're trying to guess from each other.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. Those are very simple games. This one would be more at like a Quacks level,
Okay.
maybe. In terms of like the intellectual dedication, it needs more than Quacks. It's
Right.
like you need to focus. In terms of the rules, maybe a little bit less than Quacks, but comparable. So
What is this coming out?
well, that's a good question. It's not yet we haven't yet decided.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this like next quarter or next year? Like how far into the future?
So I'm gonna guess kickstarted early next year.
Okay.
We just have a whole lot of things that are going on internally right now with the company that we need to focus on. So we can't set a timeline. If we could focus on it, we could put it out in a month from now. It's been done for, I'd say, a year now. And we've been working on extra modules with outside game designers for like the deluxe edition. So there's a whole nother module where you're trying to escape the castle. and there are these obstacle cards, and then there are these helper cards, and each one has like a special way to get the 5 keys to escape the castle.
Hmm.
And for instance, the White Queen, I don't know if you know anything about the Alice in Wonderland stories, but the White Queen lives her life backwards. And so you actually play the whole game backwards. You put all the tiles on the board and you start removing them, and you're making jam because that's one of her things. And so finding like really thematic ways that completely change the gameplay that's kind of where we're at right now, is refining those.
So it sounded like you said you're launching this on Kickstarter. Are you building these extra modules because you want to have the deluxe edition with the expansions and things specifically for Kickstarter, or is this something that you do for every game regardless of where you release it?
That's a good question. I mean, we definitely don't do that for the mass market or for toy and specialty. For
Right.
hobby, there's if this is the type of game that could build avid fans, then often we'll want to find extra sort of goodies for them. Um, but definitely Kickstarter drives some of that too. So the fan that loves Kickstarter, they want to spend extra money. Like they want a deluxe version of something that they love dearly. And if they don't love it, they'll go and find another project. So you need to first get people really excited about the project. And then you need to give them super cool um, add-ons and super cool like componentry and just things that they're going to love.
Right. Do you think Kickstarter has changed the industry in that way specifically? Because it feels like that's where the most success lies, is when you can offer those Kickstarter exclusive things. Because I see a lot of my friends, they won't buy something on Kickstarter if it's just the game, because it'll come out at retail probably at less money and you don't have to like have already spent it. But if there's exclusives, then there's a reason to back it and make sure that you're in before it goes away. Do you feel like that's been good for the industry, or what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I like to embrace change. I think it's been great for the industry. So the barriers to like um, creating a board game and putting it out there are super thin compared to 20 years ago. Finding artists, I mean, the whole like do it yourself. What's it called? The something economy. I can't even remember. The gig economy,
Oh yes, the
where
gig economy.
yeah, where basically people are self-employed. Um,
Hmm.
so there's a lot of people with a lot of talent that are self-employed and easy to get to worldwide. Um, and I would say the competition for game design is at the highest that it's ever been in history by 10 times, which means the quality of games out there are amazing. And there's what I would call a glut of games. So I think a lot of board game publishers are having a tough time right now staying in business. I think a lot of them are uh, going bankrupt and selling, and there's a lot of consolidation. And the reason is there's just a glut of product. So it's really hard to stand out. And the product that stands out are one, have better brand names, or two, are better. Uh, and so one way to stand out is to have a game that's innovative and just better, one that's just fewer rules and more fun. Um, and so, yeah, the competition's great. It's great for the industry in terms of it's great for the consumer. It's not super great for the for publishers. It's a pretty tough environment, actually.
So what do you feel like sets North Star apart from other publishers that you feel like is putting you ahead and keeping you in business?
Well, we're struggling on the business side right now. 4 of our sides are having a tough time. Our mass market, our toy and specialty, and our digital. Hobby is doing fantastic. I would say one of the edges we've always had is that I'm the type of game designer that really likes to make games accessible. So even so, if it's a mass market game, I think a lot of hobby game companies are started by hobby gamers that don't understand the minds of non-gamers. And we test all of our games with non-gamers. In fact, I love to test with my parents because when I test with a gamer, they're so quick to assimilate complicated issues that you don't often notice what all the speed bumps are, because it's just kind of like they're silent for 5 seconds and you're just not exactly sure why. But when you play that same game with your parents, they go, "This makes no sense. I don't understand. I just don't get what's going on." And so you slowly try to figure out what's the issue, and then you go, "Well, how would you expect it to be?" And so you can learn so much about these speed bumps, which everyone is experiencing. Even the hardcore gamers, they just experience it for such a short period of time, they don't really even register as a speed bump. But once you amplify it with people like parents, you see that these issues are resonating in all of the gamers that you're playing with. Then you start noticing, oh yeah, they did stumble just for a little bit. And so you're able to refine your game and even polish it at a higher degree than people who only play with hobby gamers.
That makes sense. So if you're talking about testing, like what is your testing process? You're testing with your parents. Are you bringing people in? Are you paying them for testing? Like how many
No, we
people? How
can't
long
afford
is the
that.
process?
Well, every game's different. Um, so Oceans is our latest game. We put a call out for playtesters, and 1,300 and something people came back and said they wanted to playtest. We were only looking for 100 playtesters, and so this was a big waste of time. So I read through all these applications, thousands, or I guess 1,300, and they had tons of information, and I tried to pick people who I thought were going to be good testers. Maybe it took like 3 full 10-hour days to do. So for beta V1, I opened it up to 100 people, reached out to them. I would say 50 or 60 of them made prototypes and were pretty active in testing. And then I realized, I don't have 100. So I opened it up to anyone and just said, if anyone tests. So basically what we decided was we were going to do beta V1, beta version 2, and beta version 3. And anyone who would play each version 5 times would be listed as playtester and get a free copy of the game. And so I think it was 60 or 70 people that did that. And then the super ambitious people played it up to 30 something times. And all that information then got put into a database. And after each version test, they rated every single card, which was 100 and something of them, for fun and for balance, like whether it was too powerful or too weak. And then I use that information to try to keep all the things that are fun about the game, and then try to balance the cards so that we don't have any things that are overpowered.
Very cool. Is that a pretty typical thing, or was that special for Oceans?
Well, we did the same thing for Climate. So for the heavy strategy games, it's really difficult to, with like a CCG type game. It's really difficult to balance a card set. So Magic the Gathering has 100 people on a team that are playtesting, and then they've got I don't know how many people outside that are playtesting. And no matter how much playtesting you do, there are times when you find because you're in an environment where cards have synergies, and so you can't just look at one card and go, oh, the power of this card is X, because a card is inside of an environment, and you have to look at that card plus the 3 or 4 cards that it synergizes best with to really understand the impact of that card in the environment. So with Climate, we did the same thing, but it wasn't as we just didn't have as much interest. I'd say maybe there were 20 or 30 testers instead of over 1,000. Over 1,000 people put in data into our database.
Wow.
And so that gave us a lot of power, but also a lot of extra work to go through and try to assimilate all this data and try to figure out, what opinions were common to the most number of people.
So going back earlier, you mentioned that hobby as a category is doing really well with your business, but the mass market, the toys and the other ones are not doing as well. Can you tell me what that means and what your plan is to try and address those?
So we've gotten ourselves into a crisis over here. And so we've actually let go of more than half of our employees last year. So we had 20 something employees, and we're down to maybe 8 full-time employees now. I don't even remember. We have a lot of contractors though. So that's the first thing, is just cutting our expenses. And then we're gonna have to sell some of our brands at this point to pay off the debt burden that we have. That's gonna come due at the end of the year.
So is that debt coming from too much inventory and not enough sales? Is that where most of it comes from, or what is that? What's creating the debt?
I should be analyzing our numbers more, and I haven't been. I'm sure that's an issue, but so about 5 years ago, I decided I really did not want. I wanted to be designing games, which was the reason I started this company. So I've been trying to not be a control freak, which is against my nature, and let other people kind of take control of parts of the company. And I've been trying to focus on game design. So I don't understand all the issues as well as I wish I did. I've been focusing mostly on hobby, and I feel like some of the issues, the systemic issues, are like we're spread too thin. So there's really very little redundancy in all these channels that we're in. So it seems like, oh, we're doing games. Seems like it should be a lot of redundancies, but they're not. Because largely what we're doing is we're a publisher, so we're marketing these games and selling them. And you need a totally different sales relationships, totally different marketing relationships. And even bigger than all that, you need a totally different marketing team, because it's pretty difficult for people to understand one mindset that's completely contrary to another mindset. So like and then it really fragments your brand. It's really hard to send out email blasts. It's really hard to figure out what your website should look like when the moms who are shopping at toy stores looking for gift items for their birthday parties that they're going to, looks at a hobby game and says, "Oh my God, that looks dumb," or offensive, and a what I call boys in a basement, which is me, looks at it and goes, "Oh man, that is so cool."
Right.
And so the mindsets are completely different, and I feel like because I understand both mindsets pretty well, but even understanding them pretty well, it's tough to write really good copy for both, for the same person too, because they're so different. So there's really have to duplicate too many things, and then it's really hard on the product side. I'm pretty good at both sides because I have kids. I can test with kids. My wife's not a gamer. I have lots of people that are non-gamer friends that I can test with, but I can't do games for hobby. I can't spread myself that thin.
Right.
So we're really doing a poor job sometimes at product, but definitely at product marketing, like the both put together in all those channels. And then we weren't even coordinating cross channels. So we were like not leveraging each other's work. So we were just doing a lot of things poorly. And I'd say the biggest issue is we are way too small to be in 4 channels. It's just dumb. Don't do it. If you're a Hasbro, you can do it. You can have, big enough departments focusing on specific different businesses. And then there could be some cross-functional redundancies like graphic designers. There are things, definitely manufacturing, definitely accounting. So there are a lot of things that you can leverage, but not enough for our size.
I see. Yeah. So when you're saying you're selling off like brands and things, like is it selling like a toy style game to a Hasbro company, and then now they have the publishing rights and all that stuff, and then you're just gonna focus in on what's working on the hobby market?
I would love to do that.
Yeah.
Um, I can't say until, we're reaching out to companies and we'll see what people are interested in. So it's really a matter of like, if someone values it more than we do, then it's probably up for sale.
Yeah. I guess like if it's something that's valuable and they have the ability to market it well and feel like it'll be a big asset for them, that gives you then the ability to focus solely on the hobby market, which it sounds like you're a part of. So that probably makes it a lot of fun as well, and it's doing well for your business. That seems like a good strategy, just to focus in on what's working. You don't need to look for more oil once you've already struck the oil. You just keep digging.
That's what I would like to do. I mean, that's also where my heart is at. Hobby has the most flexibility, so I can create a real in-depth strategy game, a legacy game if I wanted to, and they are, for the first time in my life, embracing party games like Just One. And I wouldn't call Codenames quite a party game, but it's a parlor game, I guess.
Yeah.
But Just One is clearly a party game, and there's quite a few party games coming out that gamers love. So
Yeah.
I feel like there's so much flexibility to be creative in a lot of different ways, and so hobbies where it's at as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Now, beyond the horizon of the Alice in Wonderland game, what are some of the other ones that you're looking forward to? Or do you have any like pet mechanics that you've been trying to get into games but they keep doesn't fitting well? Like what are you working on?
Well, so a lot of long-term plans. One pet project I have, I've been calling the Phoenix Project, and it's to just redesign all of my games, because after 5 and 10 years or plus, um, I have ways to make the games better. And I'd love to like go back and just say, okay, that was my rough draft. Let's make this better. Including the Evolution series. So I've been working on notes for that for several years. Most Wanted, which was a big flop. I feel like we completely missed the boat on the marketing. I don't know. Have you ever played
Mhm.
Most Wanted? You brought it up.
I haven't. Not yet.
Okay. It's so much fun. Yeah, it sucks to just watch something that's so much fun just get dropped. Really, it was designed for non-hobby gamers, but launched to hobby gamers. It really just didn't. It wasn't quite designed right for our fans, and it wasn't really explained well to our fans who they should play this with and how.
Mm.
So, um, what else? I think Wits and Wagers we've already redesigned a bunch of times, and the latest version, the Vegas edition, I think that's the best edition. That one is really solid. So I don't have a way to improve that one. We do have a superhero edition of Wits and Wagers, where every player is a superhero with a superpower, and it's a team game with the supervillains against the superheroes, and the player powers have synergies. And so I would say it is a party game designed for hobby.
Hmm.
And I mean,
I
we
like
designed it.
those kind of games
It's
because like
fun.
I grew up playing not that many games, and so like in college when my friends would want to play these party games, for some reason like I didn't really sit well with wanting to play them. But I have very much enjoyed code names, and Just One, like you mentioned, has been one I've played a lot recently, and they feel like games that do fit that category of games, like party games for gamers, where you can enjoy it because there's some like I don't know what it is. It feels like there's strategy and interesting decision making, whereas like in other ones, it's not the same. Uh, so I've been really enjoying this trend of the new wave of party games coming out, and I think that the Exploding Kittens company has been doing a great job of even improving the kind of games I don't as much enjoy, making them more extreme and more fun and just more approachable. That I could play a game; it's not that big a deal, and it's so ridiculous that why not throw a plushy burrito at somebody? And it's just great.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Yeah.
Well, I think this has been a great time getting to know you more and understand North Star Games. What are some other things that North Star Gamer fans can look forward to, or people who don't know? Like, what would your recommendation if, like, my wife and I were to purchase another game from your company? We haven't played with some wagers. Is that
Do it.
we also? Yeah. Okay. Vegas edition sounds like the right one to get then.
I would get so Vegas shines with, in my opinion, a crowd. So have a part. So at a party, play in teams. with 7 different teams of 2 to 3 people on a team.
Okay.
That's where it shines, because that's where there's no other board game experience that rivals it. Like there's nothing as good as Wits and Wagers in that particular situation, where you're answering trivia, you're listening to your friends, you're arguing with your friends, you're over listening to what other people are saying, you're saying, oh, I think he knows a little bit about sports, and then you've got these pile of chips and you're figuring out where you're going to bet. It's a 30-minute game show that you get to be a part of. And I don't know of any other board game that rivals that experience in that way.
Sounds like the next thing on my shopping cart list.
Yeah, if
Very
you do
cool.
parties, it's really fun. Say Anything is like, have you played Say Anything?
No, I haven't.
That is came out before Cards Against Humanity, but it is like a Cards Against Humanity, but you have a dry erase pen and you write down your answers.
Okay, so it's another one of those judge-based games.
Yeah, it came out after Apples to Apples and really used that model, and it brought in a lot of creativity to the game.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, now if people want to follow you or North Star Games, what are the best channels to do that on?
So right now, I've been actively monitoring D Crapuchettes, or for Twitter at D Crapuchettes, and I've been doing our North Star Games, which is at North Star Games. I don't personally do Facebook, so I've kind of Twitter and Board Game Geek are the places where I hang out. But if I get better, I'll try to do Instagram and Facebook one of these days.
Very cool. Well, thanks again for coming on and chatting with me, and have a great rest of your day.
Cool. Thank you, Trent. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Bye.